Hi, I'm Steve Robbins, and I'm here today with Karl Hebenstreit, the author of Taking Care of Business with the Enneagram. Welcome, Karl.
Thank you, Stever. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me, Hebenstreit, German?
It is, and the funny thing is, a very German name. Of course, Karl and Hebenstreit are very Germanic names. And the funny thing is, I'm only a quarter German. And I guess another fun fact would be that there's actually a Hebenstreit castle in Slovenia. So if anyone actually wants to visit an old castle that's now been turned into a library, it's in Ravenna Koroskam. So check it out. It's beautiful. Yes.
So you're telling me that we can go, you'll make spanakopita, because that's the Greek thing,
Because I am Greek. Yeah, mostly
and
Greek.
we'll take a tour of a German castle, and you can pretend to be
Exactly.
the lord of the manor. There'll be like name checks out. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and you can check
well,
out some books at the same time because that's a library now. So yeah.
yes. Well, speaking of books, I noticed that you have a book, Taking Care of Business with the Enneagram.
I do the How and My, taking care of the business with the Enneagram. It's the third edition, and I'm thrilled to launch it. It just got published and launched this week, and it's a much more expanded version of the first and second editions, and now it's in color, and the charts are just gorgeous in color, and there are even more applications of the Enneagram to business. So I'm really excited to have it out and to have it as a tool that's practically used in organizations by organization development practitioners, leaders, human resources practitioners, managers, anyone.
Got it. So we're going to have a book club reading in the castle while eating
I love that
spanakopita.
idea.
We're going to put it
Yes,
all
I
together.
totally love that. Maybe we can do like a riverboat cruise, and somehow I don't know how we can connect to Greece, but we'll make it happen.
We'll
Anything's
figure it out
possible,
for
right,
sure.
kids? Yeah,
Because right when you're the lord of the manor, that's very much like being a business leader. See, wasn't that a great smooth transition?
great transition. I love it.
No one's going to notice who's watching this. They're just going to go along so smoothly. Um,
Yes.
and so I've been an executive coach. We're both executive coaches, and I've been an executive coach for many years. And I've always been interested in psychological typing mechanisms, and there's a gazillion of them out there.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that you did is you ran my profile for me
Yes.
before we had this, and I read it, and there were some parts in there that were super scary accurate.
Good.
like like I read the paragraph and I'm like, how did they know that? There's nothing that I said in that inventory that would lead them to know this
Yes.
weird, quirky thing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that makes me wonder, if I am a leader, why do I need sneaky, weird, quirky information about the people who I work with?
So first of all, I'm thrilled that you were scared by the results, which is a great thing. You want to be because it's something that you increase self awareness, right? So it might be something that you know about yourself, or that maybe you don't fully know about yourself, and then it's written down, and you see it, and you're like, oh, okay, so this is a thing. It is a thing. So I need to be aware of it, or work with it, or develop it, or consider it, or integrate it, or whatever that thing is. That's part of your personality and your being. And starting with self is obviously the very first step. So understanding yourself better and how you think and what makes you tick and what drives you and what motivates you and what's driving the decisions as a leader. So that's going to be really helpful for you to understand that part about yourself.
One of the things that really surprised me when I was reading the report was to find out that I was a type 6. And the thing about type 6s is that we are motivated by anxiety and the desire for safety and wanting to make sure that the future is safe and comfortable. And I read this, I'm like, that's silly, that's ridiculous. I am a visionary, I am an entrepreneurship type, I am the sort of person who goes out and does grand creative things. And then I thought about it and I'm like, yeah, that's what I do when I feel safe. And the rest of the time, I'm making a list of everything that could possibly be going wrong in the world and making sure that I have a contingency plan or a prevention plan for every one of them. So you
Yeah.
pegged me. So if I'm a leader and I know that about myself, I know that actually what's motivating me here is contingency planning and is fear is fear and anxiety for the future, which just sounds so not Disney-esque. How do I use that information?
Well, first of all, yes, you're absolutely correct that type 6 is part of the fear triad. That doesn't mean that all nine types, all nine types can be, all types have fears. But the types, the 5, 6, and 7 are considered the part of the fear triad. And for the 6, it is the wanting to be safe, secure, and comfortable. And as a leader, knowing that about yourself is actually a great thing, because we don't value that as much in especially Western civilization, in corporations. We try to be more innovative and visionary, like you said. So you're able to get to that spot of being a visionary, and any type can be visionary. It doesn't have to be a certain type is the only type that can be visionary. Some types are more prone to it than other naturally, but it doesn't mean that you can't from any type be visionary. um, but it's knowing that this is your initial lens, this is your default, this is where you're going to go to. It's great to surround yourself with people who have diversity of other perspectives as well, so that you get a fully well-rounded picture, including your own gift, to be able to contribute to a great decision, or planning, or looking at a situation and making it make sense. So it's integrating your perspective as a leader, making sure that you're balancing it with diverse other perspectives. And that's another really wonderful part about the Enneagram. It helps you understand and build and integrate diversity into yourself and into your organization, into your teams. And therefore, you're able to be much more effective. So
Okay.
understanding that about yourself and integrating the other styles is critical.
Now, in order to integrate the other styles, I obviously have to have some idea of what the other styles are and the people around me. How, well, first of all, how do I do that? Like, do I just look at the list of descriptions and say, okay, I'm a 6, Carl's a 4, Fred is a 9, Christine is a 3.
So there are some people that do that, and we don't recommend that at all, because we don't really know. We have truly no way of knowing what type another person leads with, because the motivation or drive is internal, and we can't read people's minds and know what their motivations or drivers are. What we see is their behavior, and we make some assumptions based on that. And behaviors, the same behavior, can have a whole bunch of different motivators that are motivating that behavior, and it's manifesting that behavior, and we don't know what the motivation or driver is. So ideally, it's really engaging with your people, engaging with your team members individually, to find out what's important to them, what's driving them, what's what do they think about, what keeps them up at night, what are their fears.
So,
So
well, so I
understanding
know I
that.
know what a 6 is now because I've read the report. Can you give me some examples of what are some of the other types and the other fears or drivers that they might have?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can start with 6, because you're in that we talked about the fear triad, the 5, the 6, and the 7, which is also the head types, the thinking types. It's a thinking style.
That's me.
So yeah, so they spend a lot of time in their heads. So the 5s are very objective about their thinking style. They take in information. They're really, really wonderful about analyzing this information and creating models, in a sense, to be also safe themselves, but they really want to be more knowledgeable so that they have the power and the ability to be expert in certain areas. And they're really trying to do that so they don't look foolish. So they want to have all this information. And they're gathering objectively this information and creating models that will predict how things will turn out, so that they can prepare for them in that way and not look foolish. The 6s are doing it from more of a worst case scenario planning perspective, and in order to be safe, secure, and comfortable. And they're really, really, really loyalty and fidelity and trust is truly important to them. They want to know who they can trust, so they can build a tribe to be safe in. And the last part of that fear or thinking triad is the type 7, which is the opposite. Instead of a worst case scenario planning or an objective way of looking at things, they're actually best case scenario planning, always looking visionary, opportunity, options, fun, excitement. So it's really reframing things in a positive way. So
Okay.
that's the 3 different thinking styles. And by the way, even if you don't lead with one of these styles, you will have access to one of these styles as your primary way of thinking. So any of the other 6 types that we haven't talked about yet will have one of these types as their primary way of thinking. So it's great to know and which one you affiliate with or which one you default to.
So if 5, 6, and 7, you said those are primarily the thinking types, or the
Yes. Yeah.
what are the other? Because it goes 1 to 9, so there must be a 1,
Yeah.
3, 4, 2, 3, 4, and 8, 9, 1.
Yeah, so let's continue after the 7. We can go to the 8, 9, 1. And the 8, 9, and 1 are the action or body or gut or anger styles. So the 8 is all about power, control, authority, truth, justice. They are very misunderstood because people see them as intimidating, and they don't intend that. That's not their intent at all, but they have a lot of power, a lot of energy that shows up with them. And they're always seeking truth, and they like to debate to get to truth, and they're perfectly fine with conflict as a way to get to truth. Whereas all of the other 8 styles are not as comfortable in conflict. So that's the style 8, and really the power for them is execution, really getting things done as well and leading others to get things done. We reward type 8s very much in organizations, just like we reward the type 7 thinking style of visionary and opportunity seeking, right? So after the 8, we have the 9, which is more about peacekeeping and mediation and harmony and tranquility and balance. So they're looking for, they don't want the conflict. They want everyone to, why can't we all just get along, right? Let's just all get along, find a way to get along. So it's that not rocking the boat, going along to get along type of mentality, and always seeking that diplomacy, that just, let's just all just see how the whole thing fits together, that system-wide perspective. And then the type 1 is the perfectionist or reformer, where they're always concerned about doing the right thing. What is the right thing to do in this situation? That's what's driving them. So the action is on whatever is the right thing morally, ethically, according to their values. Not all type 1s are going to have the same values, but whatever that specific type 1's values are, what's the right thing to do in this situation based on those values or ethics. So that rounds out the action center, or anger or gut or body center. And then we have, as you said, the type 2s, 3s, and 4s, which comprise the heart or feeling center or image center. And that's, or pride center as well. So the type 2 is the helper or giver, very, very intuitively understanding of what other people need. So they have this instinctual ability to know what other people need and provide it to them in order to be liked by them. So that's an external focus of their heart, right? Their feeling center. The 3s are much more about goal achievement. So the 3s can, of course, feel. It's a way of feeling, but it's going back and forth. It's they're seeing what's needed in the situation. They see what other people need, but they also are driven by the achievement of the goal. So that's what's going to drive them. So sometimes they're going to push their own feelings down in favor of achieving the goal. And the 4s are more about taking in all of the emotions and the feelings. They're very empathic. They're very well connected to their feelings and able to feel not only their own feelings, but everyone else's feelings as well. So they're driven by this need to be different, unique, special, authentic, and genuine. So that's what they're always looking for. So those are the various drivers, the 9 drivers. Yeah.
One of the things that I've always found fascinating, excuse me, one of the things I've always found fascinating about organizational life is I maintain that we have a whole series of jobs that we don't have names for. And because we don't have names for them, we don't have boxes on the org chart, and we don't, generally speaking, hire for them, although we know we need it. And
Right.
for example, you mentioned a couple, like I think 3 of these types. I think 3 or maybe 2. I forget which ones. But I think it was the 9 and the 2. One of the things I've always been fascinated by is there are people who I just call catalysts in organizations or in teams. And they may not even do their work particularly well. They might not do a lot of work, but when they're present, the team works, and the team works really well. And when they're not present, everything falls apart. And I think this is really seriously underappreciated, that there may be people whose primary job description basically should be drop this person into a team and stuff will go smoothly. And even though you kind of don't know what they're doing, whatever it is they're doing is, will work. I've discovered, actually, I have when I have parties or social gatherings, I have discovered that there are certain people who are like that. I know who they are. I have them flagged in my address book. So if I'm having a party and I know there are going to be people at the party who might be socially awkward or whatever, I just make sure to invite my catalyst friends. And I know if they're at the party as host, I don't have to worry about it. They will make sure that everyone has a good time.
Yeah.
So with that, how would that sort of thing relate to the Enneagram in terms of, again, me being a leader and I'm thinking about what are the functions that I want, that I need to be able to form a coherent team? I- Does the Enneagram give me some, I mean, probably no one's ever asked you this question in this way before, but does this give me any insight into the unnamed roles that I might be want to think about?
Yeah, it's true. No one has asked me that question before, and it's a very great question. And I'm actually going to go into instincts rather than the core types,
Okay.
because I think that every single type has the capability to do that if they are, if they have either a social or even a one-on-one instinct that's very strong. And there are three instincts: there's social, there's one-on-one, and there's self-preservation. So self-preservation may be more concerned about themselves and maybe not as apt to reach out to other people as often. Or if they do, it may probably be more one-on-one. But that's not always the case, right? But you may have the life of the party, the glue that brings everyone together. And usually when people say, oh, that sounds very sevenish, that would be like a very seven thing to do. But any social type can do that. Any social type can really bring the group together and focus on what's going on with the group energy. What do we need to do to bring it up, bring it down? And we all have those in us, in each of us, by the way. So if we just focus on it, what is needed for the situation? Do we need to bring more people together? Do we need to find a more social, instinctual way of bringing this group together to make them fit better? Yeah, it would be great to have maybe some two energy, and everyone has two energy within us, by the way. Even if you're not, if your core type is not two, it doesn't matter. You still have type two within us. We have all nine types within us. It's just that we have one that is the major driver throughout our entire life. And the other eight we have access to in a variety of different ways. And they may be higher or lower or easily or less easily accessible, but we do have the ability to access them. And it's really focusing in on that, saying that, oh, I need more two energy, or I need more nine energy,
Well,
or I
again,
need more
that's how I can
social.
manage myself.
Right.
If I'm thinking about my team now, I need to put together five people to,
Yeah.
to run a project, and I don't necessarily know. And let's say that I know their Enneagram types. Should I be striving to get like one person from the head group, one person from the feeling group, one person, wait, it was head
Oh,
action.
great.
What
Yeah.
one person from the head, one person from the action, one person from the heart. How should I think about this as a tool to be used to build my team or my organization?
So I would be very careful about treading on that way, because we don't want to use any of these instruments for selection or deselection.
Okay.
Because the whole thing, the whole point is that we have all these styles within us, and we can access them when we need to by focusing on them. So if we know that we can run a report, we can run a team report, and we can say, wow, this team is heavily heart centered. So maybe we don't access our thinking and our action as much as we do because we're always in this heart center stuff all the time. We knowing that, we can then say, yeah, these are the right people for this team because they're passionate, they want to do this. But knowing that they're going to be heavily concentrated in this feeling center, let's make time box or make sure that we focus on, okay, let's get to some thinking stuff and let's get to make some decisions and take some action, because we can't spend all of our time on feeling,
Okay,
nor
so
could we
we
all of our time on thinking or all of our time on action without doing the other two.
right. Okay, so what we're using this for then is not the selection piece, which
Right.
a lot of typologies market themselves as, oh,
Oh
you
yeah,
should have
they
these, you
do.
should have this. With this, what we're saying is we have all of these, and we have one that we lead with. However, since we can lead with all of them, this is more about finding the balance of directing our attention to that part of ourselves, which is a very different approach. I haven't actually heard much said about that with the other typologies I'm familiar with, the things like the Myers-Briggs, um,
Right.
etc.
Because there's more work involved in this. It's harder to do that because it's development of our own, first of all, self-awareness that this is the way we are, this is what our predispositions are, our preferences are, and how do we expand that? It's within us. How do we access that and focus more on that? Whereas it's a lot easier to say, oh, just take a test and whatever you are, we're going to stick you in that role or have you
Got
do
it.
that thing, which not all tests are valid or highly valid. And B, if the person doesn't really want to do that and they're put into something they don't want to do, they're not going to do well in it anyway, even if their test says that they are likely the best archetype to do that.
Right, right. Um, so question, you just used a word that I want to make sure we understand. You said not all tests are valid. What does that mean?
Yes.
Because presumably the Enneagram is valid. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
what is valid?
So valid is, and there are many different constructs for validity. So there's like, is does this thing even a thing? Does this is the Enneagram a thing? Is the Myers-Briggs a thing? And if it is a thing, and we do have construct validity that the Enneagram is a thing. If it is a thing, is there an assessment that accurately is able to identify what your type is? And the test that you took, which happens to be the Integrative Enneagram Solutions Test, the IEQ-9, is 95% valid. So it's 95% likely to have gotten your correct type and subtype and the instinctual stacking and all the other components that it measures. So there are no other tests out there that can claim that. There are some that, like Hogan does say that they are valid as well in being able to predict a person's success in a role. However, I think that was probably truer decades ago when things didn't change as fast as they do now. Because when you put out a job description and figure out this is the what we're looking for, by the time that person's hired, especially in an executive role, that could be 6 to 9 months or a year later. And guess what? Those situations and those needs may not be the same.
Right.
Probably.
AI just came into existence, and whoops,
Yes.
that changes everything.
Yeah, and even Myers-Briggs is only 99% valid for 3 out of the 4 letters.
Oh, interesting.
So
I didn't know that.
so you don't know which of the letters. And again, it's always up to the person to accept or identify and say, yes, the test got it right, or that doesn't sound right. And then they can validate it with friends or anyone else. But it's always up to the person to truly select and agree to what their type is. You could have told me that's not me at all. I don't agree with it. It's not me.
Yeah, no, that wasn't it. I read
It's
it.
not usually the case.
Well, like I said, that was. I mean, that my very first reaction was actually that's not the result I wanted. I didn't want to be
Oh
a
yeah, it's
six.
not. It
I
never is. I don't want to be
No,
the type I am.
yeah.
Nobody.
I wanted to be a 5 or a 7.
Well, most people want to be sevens. So I think when they get their results and they see what type they are, if they're not 7, they're disappointed. And the sevens
So
are perfectly fine being sevens.
yeah, well, yeah, yeah. Bill Gates thinks that capitalism works just great, and I'm like, well, yeah. When you're the third richest person in the world, it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to see any flaw in the system as it exists. Um, what? First of all, I have to ask what your type is.
So when I first took an unvalidated test, I proclaimed myself to be a 7, and the I forget how many. I don't think there were 20. A smaller than 20. I think there were fewer than 20 people in the room. They all turned to me and said, "You're not a 7." Because they knew me so well. These were my classmates. We were doing a PhD program in organizational psychology, and we happened to have Helen Palmer come and teach us about the Enneagram and give us a very short 9-paragraph. We read it and we pick which one we are, right? So it's not there, all the nuance was not there. So I lead with type 2.
Okay.
Yes.
Since I don't know what that means, I'll just say, well, that sounds like very prime. It's the only even prime number. How's that?
It's the helper or considerate helper or giver. Yeah.
Got it. You're
Hmm.
you're one of those niceys. Um,
Yeah.
so I my you mentioned the social self-preservation and one-on-one as being an instinct. It just
Yes.
happens to be the page of my profile that I have open on my screen
Okay.
behind us right here, and I have a bright orange social and then a gray self-preservation and a gray one-on-one. So what do those mean?
Do you have percentages that go along with them? Do you have scores that go along with them?
Let me see. I don't. Where would I find that?
They
Uh,
usually have a stacking of it, but let me also pull it up because I have a little cheat sheet that gives me a little coaching companion that will have that same information, and
ah,
I can look exactly and see exactly what's going on. So I'm pulling that up for you right now.
So while you pull that up, I'll just make a comment
Yeah,
to our
your
viewers
social
here.
is your highest at
Yep.
54, your self-preservation's at 25, and your one-on-one's at 21. Yes.
So what does that mean?
So that means that in social interactions, you are most likely to lead with a social um, lens. So you're going to go into a social interaction, like a party or a meeting or whatever it is, and you're going to read the room. You're going to read the energy. You're going to see what's going on. You're going to see, are there groups that are sectioned or off? Is there like one group or another group or is it all one big group? What's going on? What's the energy like here? What's the power structure like? Which is the more powerful group? And then you will address groups as opposed to one-on-one, right? Your one-on-one is your lowest score, so we call that the blind spot. Um, so self-preservation happens to be your secondary. So we fluctuate between our top two instincts. And so your social instinct is your primary, but you will, depending on the situation, you might go into self-preservation mode, and that's putting your oxygen mask on first, right? So it's figuring out, what do I need in the situation? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I cold? Am I warm? How do I need to be safe and
Hmm.
productive? And then you'll fluctuate back and forth between self-preservation and social. And since the one-on-one is the lowest out of that stacking, it means that you probably don't spend as much one-on-one time, um, focusing one-on-one relationships.
That's interesting because I that doesn't feel accurate to me.
Mm-hmm.
What does feel so when I think about my actual behavior at parties, um, I like to go in where there's a group, for sure. Um, and I like being around all that energy. Like I'm one of those people. I'll go to just a busy, bustling place to feel like there's a lot of energy, even if I'm just sitting and reading a book at a cafe or something.
Mm-hmm.
The self-preservation would kick in that I'm a high introvert, which most people don't understand
Mm-hmm.
that it's possible to be very high energy and love
Yeah,
people, but I get exhausted by them after 10 minutes.
absolutely.
And then I would say I go into self-preservation mode, which is I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
can I just go into the bathroom and close the door and pretend that I really need to wash my hands like for 20 minutes. Um, and that comes very much from a sense of self-preservation. Just like
Yeah.
I'm too overwhelmed. I don't have. But when I do interact with people, even at a party, I really like either a very small group, like 3 to 4 people, or one-on-one. So how should
Mm-hmm.
I think about that? Because that, like I said, the one-on-one is commonly how I end up at the end of an
Mm-hmm.
evening with a group. I'm having like a one-on-one conversation with someone.
Yeah, so our goal is to try to get those instincts pretty much even. So there is no ranking. There's no stacking.
Okay,
So they're
I
all
see.
33, 33, 33. And you've pretty much gotten that with the self-preservation, the one-on-one, because there's only a 4-point difference between self-preservation at 25 and one-on-one at 21. So I believe that, and by here's another little trick. Usually, if self-preservation happens to be your primary, or very high as your secondary, like not too far behind the primary, that usually tends to be that the person's introverted. Self-preservation tends to show introversion.
Oh,
There's
interesting.
a
Okay.
correlation there. Um, Yours, because it's the scores are so close, I I would say that you're easily, it's not really a blind spot because they're both very close. So you are fluctuating between those three, but guess what? You're more drawn to that social.
That's so. I mean, this is. I don't want to spend too long analyzing me because we do have an audience here. But no, that's very interesting because one of the things that I have come to realize about myself, which now these are how I behave in a situation. One of the things
Yeah.
I've come to realize about myself is one of my primary motivations in life, like all contexts, is I'll just call it my search for my tribe.
Yes.
It's like I'm always looking for that group. and
Yeah.
and in business, which is the context that we're talking about here, one of the things that's been very interesting in business is that I really recognize there are many different tribes in business, and
Mhm.
I have both the fortune and the misfortune to have an MBA from Harvard Business School. And the reason that I call that a misfortune is because there is a certain way of being that is by far the most common way of being at HBS. people go for a particular set of career-related reasons. There are certain, I mean, it's almost a stereotype. It's like, oh, so where did you go skiing for Thanksgiving this year? Whatever. I did not go to HBS for any of those reasons. I went
Mhm.
because I was actually interested in business as a field of study. I'm an
Right.
engineer by training. I wanted to understand the mechanism of how business worked.
Mhm.
And so I really, in some ways, I very much did not fit into that tribe. And that was my undergrad was from MIT, which was tribe nerd. I mean, tribe
Mhm.
uber nerd all the way. So I've spent a lot of my professional life kind of noticing which tribes are me, which ones are not, et cetera, et cetera, which would
Yeah.
probably be in line with that social because,
Yeah.
you
And six. The six is very, again, the six is concerned about seeking out a tribe. All of the different instincts are because that's safe. It's safe to find the people who are like you, who will protect you, and you'll feel
right,
protected by them. You trust them. There are similarities. We like people who are like us because we trust them more, right? Similar to
sure.
me bias. The other thing I wanted to really call out though is that social being your highest. So when you combine the instinct of social with the type six, the core type six with the instinct of social, when you marry those two together, you get what's called a subtype. There are 27 subtypes. Nine core types times three possible instincts is 27. So yours is duty. There's a keyword that goes along with that being duty, dutiful. And it can also show up very two-ish, that this six, the six with the duty instinct, with the social instinct, which shows duty is the actual keyword for the subtype, can show up very two-ish, very helpful, because you're out there, you're social.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh,
and
that's,
also
yeah.
very dutiful, following the rules, compliant.
God,
Yeah,
all of those things are so true. And so, sometimes I was like, I don't want them to be true, but they are.
change them,
So,
change them.
so,
You have the power to change them now that you know them. Now that you know
so
that it's hardwired into you, you have the power to unhardwire it. Yeah,
okay. So,
rewire it.
which leads to the next question. So, I'm a leader, and the way that I'm using the Enneagram for my team is I know what everyone's type and their thinking style is, and
Yeah.
if there are imbalances in what we bring to it,
Mhm.
I can take
Yeah.
steps to say, okay, everyone, today's going to be, I mean, in my case, the default is thinking. So, today's going to be a feeling day. Who here has had an emotion in the last 12 hours? Um, you know, I have. Oh, nope, that was indigestion. Sorry. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
but, um, but it sounds like then. So if one of my team members decides, like, let's say I'm having a personal develop or a professional development review with someone, and they say, I've noticed that we all tend to be this style because I'm assuming that we educate everyone in the team about the styles, so
Yes.
they also have a vocabulary and a way of understanding.
Right.
And they say, I really would like to develop my feeling or my empathy more or
Mhm.
whatever. How does one go about doing that?
So the report has there's a 42-page report and there's a 20-page report. The 42-page report has a lot more development areas. However, development happens through the Enneagram system itself. So knowing your core type, you automatically have these two lines, we're calling them arrows. One that is your stress or stretch, and the other one that is your comfort or release. So you can develop by using the high points of those two connection points. So, for example, in yours, as a type six, leading with six, you're automatically connected with nine and three.
Okay.
So you can use those for development. You can say, like, what can I learn from the high point of type nine? What can I learn from the high point of type three?
And
And you can
since
also use
since
your
the
wins.
listeners and I don't know what those, so what is an example? What would the high,
Yeah.
briefly, because we're running out of time, but like, so if I'm a
Yeah.
six and I'm going to the high point of type three, what does that imply I should be learning there?
So with the high point of type three, you're actually bringing everyone along with you. So it's not just you, it's the whole, it's others, is bringing others. And with the six, you want that. You're going to have your tribe, bringing the tribe along with you. So it's completing things with other people. You're not, the burden isn't solely on you. You're not only focusing on task, you're also focusing on emotion. and feelings, and making sure that there's no dead bodies left in your wake when you actually accomplish things. So it's all the good points of type 3.
Or they're disposed of.
Exactly. And type 9 is actually being at peace and taking the right action, so that you're not nervous, you're not avoiding conflict, you are fully engaged and present, and doing all those things that will get you in a better space.
So that's a development opportunity for me.
A development opportunity for all of us.
So yeah, relax, chill out. I'm like, yeah, that would be a development opportunity for sure.
No, seriously, but it is, and it can be. And so sixes can have those automatic connections, and that's what you can use. But you also have the automatic connections to your wings, which are what's next to you, counterclockwise and clockwise, your left and right. So you have the 7 and you have the 5. Automatic connections are right next to you. So you can use, when you feel yourself getting into too much of a negative spin, you have that little wing right next to you. That's 7. Oh, what if something positive can come out of this? What's a positive outcome that can happen? Can I prepare for a positive outcome instead of a negative one? And then you can use the 5 and say, hold on a second, maybe I can be more objective about this.
I have a daily accountability exercise that I do with my accountability buddy. And one of the things that I'm going to add on to that, largely as a result of this conversation, is, did you spend some time today explicitly looking for the things that are going right? Because I don't do that. Well? Right. I look for, what's all the stuff that we have to fix today? And
think about yesterday. What was the stuff you were worried about yesterday? What actually did happen? And what good stuff came out instead that you didn't even think about?
Right. The answer is, I'm not going to try to figure that out right now. It would take too long. But thank you so much for joining me. We're getting pretty close to wrapping up. So if there's one thing that, actually, before I ask you the final question, let me just tell you what I've heard and make sure that I'm summarizing correctly. So the Enneagram is a way of understanding people's kind of their approach to life, work, whatever, their motivation, their fears, their kind of orientation, and there's 9 different pieces to it. And the benefit of knowing this is not for hiring or for firing, but the benefit of knowing this is, if I know my own type, if I know the type of my teams, that tells me what biases we're coming in to our efforts with. And we can actually build systems to overcome those biases by focusing our attention on the other parts, on the parts that aren't represented in our natural preferred parts. And as an interpersonal person, as an individual, I can also use this for myself to say, okay, if I know my number, I have the 2 arrows, which give me development opportunities, and then I also have the 2 numbers that are next to me. So actually, as a 6, I have 9, 3, 5, and 7. So I have 4 different places to look. And if I go in here and learn about those types, those are how I, as a person, can think about my own personal development. And like, these are the ones that I can go to as resources most easily. And then, potentially branch out into the other ones that, from there. But did I get it right?
Absolutely. And I would even say that, because I have my little cheat sheet here, I can see that try out the 2 hat. Your scores are pretty good, pretty solid in all of the other styles. The 2 hat tends to be lowest for you, so try out that 2 hat. What instincts can you take from focusing on other people's needs and what they're looking for?
I'm a horrible nurturer, and I know that about myself. Like, but I have spoken it in the way that people are used to. Like the whole thing that, oh, tough love is reasonably easy for me, because I'm very logical about it. I'm like, this person needs to have this experience so that they gain the competence they need. I could do it for them, except then they would basically, I would basically just be enabling them. So, hey kid, there's the deep end of the pool. We're going to just go swimming, toss. Like, that's my style of love, which I think of that as being helpful and supportive. But as I read the description of a 2, I'm like, it's not quite a 2.
People, especially the ones being thrown into the water.
I can't tell. They're not really coherent when I ask them.
Yeah. That can be a problem.
All right. So if there's one thing we take away from today, what is it that our viewers and listeners should know?
I would recommend or invite people to think about what is your perception or perspective or model or worldview, and what happens if other people don't have that same worldview? And guess what? There are 8 other worldviews out there. And so, how do we find out what worldviews exist in the people that are important to us, whether they're our families, our friends, our colleagues, our direct reports, our leaders, our stakeholders, whatever they are? So, a lot of times we go through life thinking about the golden rule that everyone thinks and feels exactly the same way that we do about everything, because that's what we've been taught. But the reality is, we need to apply the platinum rule, which is treat others the way that they want to be treated, not the way that you want to be treated. Because how they want to be treated is probably going to be different than how you want to be treated.
So, cool mundo. And I just realized we didn't put your book up on the screen because I didn't set up my technology correctly to put a big picture of the cover. So you'll have to show us in real life.
Yeah, let's go.
Do it. Do it.
Let me see if I can send this. There we go. The How and Why.
Beautiful.
Of Business with the Enneagram, and we can go 3rd edition.
3rd edition. All right, check it out. Taking Care of Business, and people can find you at performandfunction.com.
That's right.
Which is what we have. Awesome. Thank you, everyone who's watching, for joining us. This has been me, Steve Robbins, and Karl Hebenstreit, not German, Greek, bidding you farewell for today, and go out and find out your Enneagram type. It's fascinating. Take care.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, everyone.